Okay, I think we're all here. Good morning, everyone. So I just wanted to discuss, I'm not sure if everyone read the document. I just wanted to discuss some possible implementations. We are getting to a point where we need to add more data for some widgets. The one specifically that brought me to this was that we might want to store data about the last person editing the description of an issue. We currently store the last person editing the description or a title of an issue. And from UX, Nick suggested it might be better that we keep it separate in work items. So for that, we would need a separate column. I mean, two separate columns, one for the user that edited the description last, and also the timestamp. So yep, we were talking about it yesterday. We have a couple of alternatives. I mean, the main reason to discuss this is that the issues table is too large already. So we don't want to keep adding columns to it. I think that's important, right? Because the issues table is too large already. So some alternatives, not sure if everyone read the document, but I laid out 3 possible alternatives. I see there's some discussion already about it. But some things we could do is, because of how it's implemented in the code right now, we could simply have different weights for each, for different attributes to implement it. Like we already do for some widgets, we have it on the issues table. For some of them, the hierarchy widget specifically, we have a separate table, and it just works. But I think the main thing that brought this discussion yesterday is that we might start thinking about moving fields into separate tables, even for those that we already have, like description. So one of the alternatives was to have a separate table for each widget, right? And the other one I suggested I don't really like. I mean, having a single table for all widget data, I don't think that's a good way to move forward. So, yep, that's it. So, any thoughts?
And just for this very specific use case, I want to talk about like the description use case that you brought up. And first of all, I think, so we're trying to save the last edited by the description only, right? Because right now we save last edited, but it's updated when you update the title or description. But I think this is also going to be confusing UX wise, right? Where do we show this last person who last updated the title or description and then last person who updated description? It's gonna be confusing if we show both. So I think we just use the existing field and change the meaning of it if we want to only track the edits to the description or something, but it's not related to the widget architecture. But anyway, one problem with this separate table for description though is for searching, because searching is also very tied to the title. So we search title and description, and I was planning to do some optimizations on this regarding the GIN index and all that. So it won't work with when title is in one table and description is in another table. Yeah, I think description is very central to the work item, that it could be make more sense to be into the main table. But yeah, I mean, for me, I think I go for the first approach where it's a case-to-case basis. We already have like assignees in a separate table. I don't know, there's others, but yeah.
Right. So it's specifically about talking about description. You think we shouldn't move it? I mean, that's probably the biggest column in the table, right? But so just out of curiosity, I mean, I know we are using full text search for this, but I understand that we're still using the GIN index for non-standard characters, right? that's the reason to keep the index. Okay. Right.
Yeah,
Big,
and recently what I'm trying to do is to change the index into a partial index for documents that have non-English characters. So the index would have a where, the title or the description has a non-English character. And if they're in a separate table, then I can't do this where clause on the index, I think.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking actually description might have been the single attribute that can be moved out of the issues table, but now I didn't think about the search problem. The other attributes are much more. I think we'll get more performance hit if we move a lot of other attributes out of the table, because a lot of the other attributes are also displayed on lists. With the description, you only load it when just load a single issue. So then you can join the table. It's not a huge issue to load that. But when you have to, for instance, load the weights, and you have like a huge list of issues to load, and you have to join pretty much the same size table with the weights in it, it's like, and then if you do that for every single widget, that adds up very, very quickly, right? So if you have like 50 widgets that you need to display on a card, and you have a board full of cards, you need to join basically a lot of tables to display that, or you need to make separate requests to just get every single data for every single issue. So I would agree that it should be. It very much depends on what are the business requirements. Like if we can somehow group some widgets that are more important together, not more important, but like if we can have clusters of widgets that we know will kind of be displayed together, then we can try and separate them in different tables that way to make the issue table not so big. Because we do have a problem with the issue table. When you want to update one column, you basically update the entire row, which can be huge. So the updates are slow and so on. But I don't think there is a solution where we say, well, yeah, let's just split every single widget into its own table and we'll be fine.
Yeah, and related to this, if we would go the other option to put all the attributes, and first of all, to clarify, I assume we are talking about scalar attributes. Is that correct? I mean, has one associations? Because in the comment it was mentioned also hierarchy widget use case, which uses separate table, but it has many associations, so it's a little bit different use case from these just scalar values.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it would be different for different attributes.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, the proposal is have one table.
But so you want to cover only scalar values or all widgets now? Also,
No, I mean, we have to take into account that many attributes might have, I mean, even references, right? I mean, even for the one that brought this up, we need to store a foreign key to the users table. I mean, the last person that edited this, right? So we do need a separate column to do that properly. I mean, because one of one of the things that was discussed before in the same issue before is maybe having a JSON-B column for different attributes, right? But of course, we cannot do this for attributes like reference in other tables.
Yes,
like,
exactly.
Yeah.
So for these major or generic use cases, or so for reasons when some widget needs to reference has many association or references other tables, I would expect that we cannot use one solution which fits all widgets. That will be my first thought. But related to putting, I think that it's reasonable to put at least majority of scalar attributes into one table. But then, as Henrik and Alexandru pointed out, if we, so imagine that we would keep only a basic issue table with IDs and start putting all attributes to separate table. And we will still have to do a join because most of the queries will be give me all issues in a project. And it will return, for example, 50,000 of issue ID records, and we will have to do join with widget table to do further sorting or filtering. So I wonder even if this basic one table for scalar values would work or would be performant, because I was struggling a lot with even epic issues, which does joins on tens of thousands of records. So I wonder if this basic use case will be valid, or if we should double check with database team first whether it makes sense to extend issues table further, or if it's viable to start using separate tables. Because then I would expect that if we start using separate table, there will need to be some UX restrictions taken into account that we will not be able to, for example, do searching or sorting by some attributes if it will be too slow.
Yeah, I think we all agree that it would be ideal if we can just keep putting everything on the issues table. I mean, for, I guess, performance reasons when querying the data, but I mean, that's why I wanted to have the discussion. It's only because,
Sorry, I want to clarify, I'm not saying that we should do this. I was rather suggesting that we should check with database team what would be better approach. Once we agree what are our options to do here, I mean, other than putting it into one table, I would say that we cannot use multiple tables per each widget. So maybe we can just agree on one other option, which would be maybe viable.
I think it may be worth connecting with the database team. So it's like, I think it's good timing that I'm the acting PM for that team now, so I can help out with that. But I do know after speaking with them, one of the broader things they want to do is for any table that's over 100 gigs, they want to partition it. And so that's one thing that if we want to keep adding columns to the issues table, like then we'll probably have to prioritize supporting partitioning to get basically each partition down below 100 gigabytes. But they're also actually looking at a model like this that can be sort of standardized for lots of different teams. So I'm out next week, but I will raise something in Slack in the database channel and try to connect the engineers together at least so they can keep moving things forward.
Okay.
I don't have a strong opinion, but that's something I'm aware of.
One question about this effort. I pasted a link to this epic in my comment to the issue, but I wonder if there the effort is rather split the tables by searchable part and not searchable part, which is related to what Henrik mentioned at the beginning, because then this would expect that we have searchable parts of widgets and not searchable. So, I mean, split is not done just by start putting everything to a separate table, but rather decide what will be searchable or filterable or sortable and what will not be.
Yeah,
Is that
just to
correct?
clarify,
Or maybe I just misunderstood the epic, so I'm sorry in that case.
like associated tables can also be, we can do searching and filtering to some extent, right? Like we currently search labels, assignees, they're just a little bit, more complicated because it has many and all that. But the only thing with the description that ties it with the title is because it's for the text search. So when it's for a single input, the input here is plain text, right? and this single input searches these two fields together. So for the other things are like the label filter is like it's a label filter and it searches the label table, something like
Yeah,
that.
I wonder if we can split that search into searching the title and searching the description, and then we are kind of freed to move the description out of the table, right? And the second question will be, for me, is like if we dropped the description column and the indexes, how much space do we get, right? Like currently it's like 200 gigs. If we remove the description and its indexes, how much do we gain? Is it like half of the table? Is it more? Is it less? And then that can also probably drive a bit of the decision. And then maybe we can settle on changing a bit the search UX so that you'd search the title, like you'll filter or search within the title or search within the description.
Yeah, we're also
have
allowing
search
that
within the
option.
comments, right, as well.
Yeah, that's a different, more complicated thing. But yeah, regarding the description, I'm inclined to say that it's safe to keep this in for now because the index is gonna be cheaper once I change the index to the partial index. Initial checks I did was like the index, the GIN index right now in the description is like 100 gig, and it goes down to, I thought 8 gig or 9 gig or something, but yeah, so we're gonna save like 90 gigs on the index, and it will be cheaper to update because we need to update the index only when your issue has non-English characters, which is gonna be rare. So yeah, for the English characters, the index is gonna be on the full text search table, which is a separate table. So it's only gonna be updated when you change the description and the title, right? So if you change the weight or other stuff, we don't have to update an expensive GIN index. So I think we kind of solved the problem. We just don't want to add more, I think. And I don't think we need to add more because I think we got the core of what an issue is already like in this table, right? I don't think there's some core part of an issue that's going to get added soon. More of the widgets we're planning are like extra stuff, which make more sense as a separate table, I guess, but you know.
Yeah, per se, like I'm looking at the table description. It's like it's not so wide. It has like maybe 20 columns, maybe up to 30 or something like that. Like it's not hugely wide as like application settings or something like that that has 150 or something along those lines. But the table size is big, and the updates do take a long time, and so on. So yeah.
It seems to me that a widget in general is really a wrapper around data that can be stored in other places. So I don't believe we need to start pulling in data, specifically migrating it into widgets. I think there are widgets that require additional data that we may decide that we want a single type of table that can handle certain things or have its own table. There may be certain attributes across all widgets that we want to start storing, maybe an updated, maybe I don't know what. But you know, in terms of the proposal of putting it, I don't think we need a separate table for each widget, and I think a single table for each widget would not be right either. Again, unless there's a common set of information that we can store that we need to track for each individual widget, that would make sense to have in a single table for everything. But moving the description to another table to me is kind of separate than what our widget database table is going to look like. So.
Yeah, I think the question, and this is not something that was raised, but the question with a separate table may come when we start investigating custom widgets, because those are custom and those are not like something that you'd have for every record, right? Then
exactly, yeah, for custom ones, there will definitely be a need to have their own table for sure, I would think.
Yeah, but then and then we'll need to think how we do the ordering and all that fun stuff.
So is having one separate table which would join where we would store widget data for all widgets most probable approach, or are there any other thoughts? Or did I misunderstand?
Yeah, I think it seems we all lean towards not moving widgets out like to separate tables. At least not the predefined ones or the ones that are defined by current columns. It seems like we want to keep most of them in the issues table. And as Heinrich raised at the beginning, maybe we should rethink about the last edited functionality, where you ask, do we really need two different dates for the title and description? Can we reuse something that is in there already for that type of information and so on?
So
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Jan.
yeah, just one question specifically to this discussion about reusing description. I wanted to ask, we already store version history of descriptions where we track all the description changes, and there is a table for this. Would it be usable to just extend this table also with tracking user ID reference and maybe reuse it for showing, if the purpose is just showing who last edited the description? Maybe we wouldn't need to track it separately on another place.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Good idea. Yep. I mean, I'm not sure where we're storing the versions of
Description versions, it's a table.
I think
Description versions,
Henrik
okay.
knows this most or best because he implemented it. If I remember
Yeah, it's the
right.
description versions table, and it currently does not have the user ID, even though because it's kind of tied to the system node. Yeah, so a system node has a description version kind of thing, and because the system node already has the user, I didn't save the user in the description versions. It's just a diff, but we could. But my only concern there is we already have the last edited column and last edited by columns on the issues table. And if we really want the last edited by, because right now, the way we render it is also kind of suggests that it's the description, right? It's like right under the description where you could see the last edited thing. So it kind of suggests the description. So maybe we just change the meaning of this field to last edited description instead of adding a new field. But yeah.
That makes sense. I mean, that would change a lot, probably, because this is true for all issuables. So it's also true for merge requests, I think, and epics probably. But I guess it makes sense to ask. I mean, you're right. Probably it makes more sense to. I mean, for me, right before I went into this issue, I always thought that the edited message was about the description. And I think everyone found out that it wasn't. I mean, the title also updates this during this discussion. So I guess it's more intuitive to, I mean, just because how it's displayed right now, as you said, right below the description, it might make sense to, yeah, for this particular scenario that might work. I mean, I don't think it's a big deal that the title won't update it anymore, right? It's just
it's on the system notes anyway, like everything.
Yeah, right. That's
Hi,
a good idea.
Quick question for you. On the description table, does it contain the latest description or just contains the version one back?
The description versions table is the one back. Yeah.
The one back, that's what I thought.
And one more thought about if we would go to follow the general storage discussion, if you would go with separate table, I would be really curious how query performs when you need to do searching also on this widget data. I mean, how it performs if I want to show issues in a project like GitLab, sorted by some or filtered by some widget attribute. So I need to do a join between the basic issue table with the widget data table if we will store these in a separate table.
Yeah, we already do that for labels and SCTs, but like the more we add to that, the more tables you need to join, the more performance hit you get, I would assume.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
maybe it's
And the
fun.
other thing to, it's not just the query performance, but it's also the like cognitive overhead on the developers, and like you gotta do these preloads every time, and you know, if you forget a preload, it's an n+1, and yeah, those.
It makes sense to have the separate tables for the one-to-many relationships, like the object, which are other objects. You can still keep this kind of data within the table when the list is static or is like predefined. You may have like a set of, I don't know, things, how we want to call them, and then you have an array within that column, right, and list the things there. But when it's a relationship, yeah, you've got to have a separate table. But for the scalar or predefined list of things, I think we should be using a column within the issues table.
So it sounds like, just to kind of summarize as we're coming up on time, we're going to, for now, just continue doing what we're currently doing with the issues table. Is that kind of take it on a case-by-case basis. If we're adding a new widget that requires new data, we'll determine if it makes sense to add another column to the issues table, or if we should, for that, create a separate table similar to how we're doing assignees and any of the other separate tables that we're using.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think that's correct.
I guess we'll need to follow up on the conversation with the database team, as Gabe said, to see if, yeah, I mean, it might be possible to keep adding columns. I don't know how partitions might solve this problem, right? If they do it with the issues table. So, yep, I guess we'll have to follow up. And for this particular issue about the last edited for description, I'll follow up with Nick. And as Henrik suggested, it might be possible to simply repurpose or rethink how the current information is stored. I mean, to repurpose it to only description editions, not typo edits. So yep. That, I guess that's it. Anything else before we drop from the call?
Thank you for creating the call. This was fast and helpful, I think. Rather than back and forth within an issue, I think this is much faster.
Yeah, it might be faster for things like this. I noticed that the issue was created a year ago, and so I also agree it's good to have this calls.
But probably another action item is to update the issue with the summary, at least, because other team members would want to follow, and watching the video is not the fastest way to consume this information as well.
Right. I'll post a summary to that discussion. Okay. Anything else? I think we're good. Okay. Thank you everyone for joining. So we'll continue the discussion with the database team later.
Thanks,
Okay,
man.
bye everyone.